how Starlight went back in time and created all those alternate timelines? Dooming them all to their own demise, creating a multiverse of endless death and destruction? Yeah? Well, I don't. Because there is no multiverse. None of these alternate timelines truly happened. And way too many people seem to misunderstand how time travel works in Equestria, all because Avengers Endgame was way too popular. No joke, I'm pretty sure that is the actual reason as to why people misunderstand time travel in this show. Now, when I say that these alternate timelines never happened, what I mean is that yes, they traveled through time, but these different histories are not multiple timelines. Rather, every future we see is all the same timeline, just shifted around a whole bunch. Now, I know a lot of people are going to object to this, and there are two main reasons why. Let's take a look at the first time we see time travel in the show. Twilight is going back in time to meet herself in an attempt to change the past. Only it turns out that the past cannot be changed, as it has already happened. This would suggest that Equestria runs on a single linear timeline. But then we are introduced to Starlight, who takes the exact same spell and modifies it with the use of Twilight's map, allowing herself to alter history. This is where a lot of people say that there has to be a multiple timeline situation here rather than a single linear timeline, because it was already established that the past cannot be changed, meaning that this has to be a separate universe that was created when Starlight changed things. But this is the part that people tend to misunderstand. Starlight didn't create an alternate timeline. She really did change the past and, by proxy, change the future. How is this possible when it was established that the past cannot be changed? Well, with the map, as mentioned earlier. But how do we know this is the case rather than the multiverse theory? Well, because the show outright tells us multiple times that this is in fact what's happening. When Twilight meets Sakura in the Chrysalis future, she puts on a salve that is meant to reveal if a pony is secretly a changeling. But it has a different reaction than every pony is used to seeing, causing Twilight and Spike to glow. Pinky asks what it means, and Sakura responds with, "The meaning is far worse, I see, for it is we who should not be." This very clearly implies that these characters are not meant to be where they are. If this was another timeline, then none of these characters are out of place and therefore exactly where they should be. But according to Sakura, this is not the case, meaning one singular timeline. Furthermore, we get a visual representation as to how time travel works. Sakura says, quote, "Time is a river where even the tiniest changes seen can lead to a cascade of effects downstream." And as she says this, she redirects a trickle of water to go a different path. Compare this to Endgame, where the Ancient One does not redirect the timeline in her explanation as to how time travel works, but rather splits the timeline. Once again, we are told that this is one timeline changing. And finally, Sakura leaves off with these words to Twilight: "Race to the map while we hold off their attack. Stop Starlight and put the whole world back on track." She is literally saying that the world they are in is off track and needs to be corrected. Now, I can already hear some skeptics in the comments. Well, what if there are multiple timelines and the characters just aren't aware of it? After all, time travel is not a very common thing and is very complex. The characters may actually be the ones who are misunderstanding how time travel works. And to that I say, are you seriously assuming that you know more about how time travel and magic work than the ponies who have studied magic their whole lives? Also, it'd be really weird and extremely contrived for the writer's intent to be to make the multiverse situation, then just straight up try their hardest to tell us otherwise. The writers clearly meant for this to be a single timeline, and I don't know about you, but I'm going to assume the people who made the rules understand the rules more than we do. But there is still one main reason as to why people would think that this is a multiverse situation. And that reason is, drumroll please, people just really like Endgame. Yep, that grand 3-hour-long film that was made back when 3-hour-long films used to be cool is the reason why people think there is a multiverse here. It was just a really fun idea that was popularized by this movie and caused everyone to think that practically all time travel works this way, despite the fact that there is really zero evidence for a multiverse and tons of evidence for a single linear timeline. After Endgame, this model of time travel became so popular that it was pretty much everyone's go-to model. And people forget that the multiverse is not the only model for time travel. The only way that someone can really come to the conclusion that there are multiple timelines running parallel to each other is by making a ton of assumptions and just throwing out the simple answer. And if you really like the idea of there being a multiverse and you find that more interesting, well, I'm sorry, because I'm not here to tell you which is more or less interesting. I'm just here to tell you how it is. speaking of alternate timelines, have you ever thought of an alternate timeline where Zephyr Breeze and Rainbow Dash end up together? Yep, that is an actual thing that we discussed in my previous video reading your guys' controversial MLP opinions. That video is on screen now, so go ahead, check it out, and hold on to your sanity because we're going for a ride!